see you guys in the dark.
For background, I'm an 18-year-old female in my first semester of college. I've always seemed to get a lot of attention from guys, and tend to attract some pretty creepy ones for some reason. Probably because I'm overly nice, and have a hard time just telling people to fuck off when I get a bad vibe from them. Anyways, I decided to get Tinder over the summer due to quarantine. All of my classes for college are online, so I'm not able to meet many people. I thought if I got Tinder, I could get to know some people from my university, and maybe even go on some dates. I got a lot of matches. Some guys were really nice and cool to talk to, and then I obviously got some people just wanting to hook up, which I'm not into, but nothing too abnormal. That's what Tinder is mainly for, after all. After a few months, I ended up matching with a guy from out of state. We matched because he was in the area for work. He was about 8 years older than me, but I didn't mind. First red flag right there. He seemed pretty nice, and he asked for my Snap, so I gave it to him. We talked a little bit, and within a couple of days, he became very clingy and obsessive. I have an extremely busy major, and most of the time is taken up from school. Because of this, I'm not always on my phone, and cannot answer messages right away. If I didn't answer for an hour or two, he would message me again and again. He said things like, "Why won't you talk to me? Are you seeing someone else? I wouldn't be surprised if you were. You're so beautiful, and I need you." I thought that this was very strange, as I had just started talking to him, and we clearly weren't seeing each other. I explained to him that I am very busy with school, and it has nothing to do with personal stuff. He said he respected that, and we could continue talking. Obviously, that didn't last very long, or I wouldn't be writing this story. He continued to text me constantly, telling me he needed me, and asking why I was ignoring him. He started talking about driving 2 hours to come see me. I was weirded out, but I assumed that he was just lonely and desperate. I felt bad, so I tried to brush it off and answer when I could because he didn't really do anything too concerning. Stupid, I know. This continued for a few weeks, and I started to get extremely annoyed. I had a bad gut feeling about this guy. He started talking sexual, and I told him I wasn't into all that stuff. He apologized and said that he would stop. He didn't. No surprise there. So I started ignoring his messages. He apologized, and I called him out for this. He continuously apologized, and I left him on read. He started Snapchatting me pictures and constantly messaging me, so I unadded him. Then he texted me with another apology and said he hopes that he can take me on a date that we talked about, even though I never expressed any interest in going on one. I ignored that message too and moved on with my life. About 2 weeks later, I got a message that simply said, "I'm sorry." I ignored that too. He didn't message me after that, and it soon slipped my mind once again. Later that week, I had a dream about him breaking into my house and attempting to kidnap me. I started thinking about it again, so I tried looking him up on Instagram. He didn't have one, which I didn't think was too weird because I know some people who only use Facebook. So I tried looking him up there. He didn't have one either. Now that was pretty weird. Most people have one or the other, if not both. I thought it was so strange that this guy didn't have any form of social media besides Snapchat and Tinder. I wonder if he used a fake name. Then I decided to try one last time. I searched his name on Google. What I found made my blood run cold. The first thing that came up was an article for his arrest back in January with his mugshot. He was arrested for child pictures. They found several photos of an underage girl on his phone. He was released on bail a few days later. I was absolutely disgusted by this. This man was a predator, and he was free to do as he pleased and prey on younger girls. When I think about it, my guess is that he saw I was 18 and thought that he could get something from a younger girl without getting in trouble because I am legally an adult. I'm not stupid enough to send any revealing photos or videos. I'm so glad that I stopped being so nice and listened to my gut when things progressed. I don't know what would have happened if I didn't, and I wonder if my dream was a sign for me to look into who he was. It still creeps me out that he was so obsessed with me when I didn't talk to him for very long. So, to the creepy Tinder dude that preys on underage girls, just go and fuck yourself, dude. And definitely don't try to contact me ever again. For clarity, I am a straight 21-year-old female. So in November of 2016, I went through a pretty bad breakup. In October 2017, I finally felt comfortable enough to try to get back into the dating world. So like a moron, I got on Tinder, and it wasn't my first rodeo with Tinder, but this was the strangest thing that has happened to me yet. So towards the end of October, I met a guy named Dave on Tinder, and from the looks of it, he was an okay guy. He was funny and a gentleman. Didn't ask for anything inappropriate. It seemed fine. We talked for about 2 weeks and set up a date. We decided to go into the city where he had recently moved to, which was about 35 minutes away from my house. I got to the bar to wait for him, and he was 15 minutes late. He walked in and looked relatively similar to his pictures, which I was happy about. Then he opened his mouth to talk, and he had a very strange voice, like he was always on the verge of crying. Pretty weird. He had some tattoos on his arm, including the all-seeing eye Illuminati symbol. Trying to break the tension, I jokingly said, "Illuminati confirmed. Tell me all your secrets." And he goes, "What the hell are you talking about? Don't say that kind of stuff in public." I just kind of laughed it off, and he was being real weird. He then says, "You know that people who pry are people who die." I just looked at him, and I genuinely did not know how to respond to this. Fast forward about 20 minutes, and a couple of my friends came to the bar at my urging. I moved to sit on the same side as him, so that my friends could sit on the same side of the booth. The minute I sat down, he puts his hand on my knee and squeezes. And not like, "Oh, I'm interested," but a hard fucking squeeze. I looked at him to stop, and leans over and whispers, "You have lovely kneecaps." Like, boy, what? By the time my friends left, which was about an hour into the date, he had 7 beers. It was a Tuesday night. As I go to close my tab, he stands behind me, and he had a boner. Full-mast boner. I very quickly signed my receipt and stepped away. As I'm getting ready to say goodbye, it starts raining, and he informs me that he walked to the bar from his house and asks for a ride home. Reluctantly, I agreed. But on the very short drive to his house, he informs me that it's not actually his house, that he is living in his sister's basement. When I finally park in front of his house, he leans over to kiss me, and I tried to give him one on the cheek, and he physically turns my head and puts his entire tongue in my mouth. I pulled away, and this guy did it again. I finally pulled away and said, "Get the fuck out of my car." And he responds with, "I'm in love with you. I knew from the moment that I saw your pictures. You have to come inside to meet my sister and her husband." I told him that if he didn't get out of my car, I was calling the police. And he started tearing up and then got out of my car. So, weird boner Illuminati guy. Let's not meet again. So I met a guy on Tinder, and we really started to hit it off. We'd been chatting for a few weeks, and even discovered we had a few mutual friends. I was pretty intoxicated one night, was feeling social, and decided to call an Uber to get to his place. Once I got there, we talked outside for a little while, and ended up vibing even better in person. I opened up to him about my health problems, and he opened up to me about his older sister, who had passed away from a similar condition to mine. I was curious about his sister, but I definitely didn't want to pry. We walked into his house, and it smelled like 1,000 dead rats were rotting under the floorboard. I was still pretty drunk, so I tried to forgive it because, hey, sometimes animals die under a house, or in the walls, and there's nothing that you can really do about it. I start to look around, and the whole house looks like a cluttered storage unit. He takes me to his room, which is seemingly normal, kind of feminine, but that's cool, and we hook up. I ended up falling asleep there, and woke up around 10 a.m. to the stench of death. I opened up my eyes, feeling very sober, and started to look around the room. I noticed that only girls' clothes were hung in the closet. I start to assume that I've possibly been cheated with. Then I see a giant black binder on his nightstand. When he woke up, I decided to jokingly ask him what's in the giant binder. Turns out it was every single episode of Golden Girls printed out. He said he read it at work, and it's the only show he'll ever watch. Okay, I asked him what he did for work, something that I definitely should have known by this point, and he dodged the question. I sat up and looked at the pillow I'd been cozily sleeping on. It had no pillowcase, and was covered in what looked like old blood. It looked like blood had been coughed onto it. I started putting the unpleasant pieces together. I asked as sensitively as I could, "Hey, was this your sister's room?" I noticed the clothes in the closet. He said, "Yeah, and this is her bed. I haven't changed or washed anything. It just makes me feel better to be in her bed. This is actually where I held her when she died. And you remind me of her so much. I really, really like you." And then casually tried to hook up with me again, like he didn't just drop unsettling news on me. I felt immensely sorry for him, but needed to get out of there. I made some excuse and then left. I decided not to entirely ghost him because of how bad I felt for him. He was clearly dealing with some really dark shit. We kept in contact for a few weeks until I went on my Find My Friends app and noticed that he clearly had taken my phone while I was asleep that night and shared my location with himself. I called him and went off. This was not the first rodeo with a stalker type, and I was not dealing with it at all. He told me he couldn't believe I thought he would do that, and I'm being a really terrible person, dumping him because his cat had recently died. I blocked him. After he said that about his cat, combined with his tendency to hold on to things, it really makes me wonder what that smell actually was. Let's hope not, and though I hope he gets help. I found out from a mutual friend that his sister had passed away around 10 years prior to all of this. I also forgot to mention this, but he was strangely turned on while I was using a nebulizer with my inhaler. He said his sister had one of those. I'm 100% sure that this did turn him on. So, to my crazy Tinder stalker, who happens to hold on to some really creepy stuff, I really don't want to see you ever again. So about a year ago, I moved into a new apartment, and it was my second year living alone. The city was relatively small, and I go to the local university there. One night I was bored at home and decided to set up a Tinder date. I was talking to this apparent normal guy, and he asked if he could come over to my place. At the time, I did not see anything wrong with that, so I invited him and said that I lived alone. About 20 minutes after the message, he arrives at my apartment, wearing a black hoodie, big earphones, and he asked if there was security cameras in the hallways. I said that there was a couple, and from that I could feel that I had just made a mistake. He got into my apartment, and we made out for like 10 minutes in my bed. Then he asked if he could try some of his kinks on me. At that moment, I wasn't thinking rationally anymore, and I said, yeah, why not? He started biting my neck, then my chest, then my legs, and then he started with some really weird kinks. He started pinching me really hard in between me down there, pulling my skin and just really digging his nails into my body. At this point, I was completely panicking and was asking him to stop, but he wouldn't. To top things off, he started choking me, and I couldn't get him off of me, because he was like this big buff dude. At last, he stopped, and I rushed to the bathroom, saying that I needed to pee. In no time, I grabbed a knife, locked myself in the bathroom, and called my other friends to come help me. I got out and told him to get the fuck out of my apartment, or I would call the police. To my surprise, he tried to attack me, but I had the knife in my hand, and I started screaming. After hearing my doorbell, he quickly got dressed and rushed down the stairs. Please be careful when bringing strange people to your home. This shit scared the hell out of me, and I don't think that I can do Tinder dates ever again. Let me start by stating that I'm 24 and female. I downloaded Tinder to see what it was all about. I didn't put too much thought into it. I never took it very seriously. I never take much seriously at that. Most of the things that I do are for shits and giggles. I think I tend to forget that the internet is not a game, and there are real-life people behind that screen. I get on the bus back home after a long day of running errands. I sit down, and from the corner of my eye, I notice a heavy-set man staring at me. I'm used to being stared at, so I just ignored him. Also note, my Tinder account had been officially terminated months ago. I sneeze. He said, "Bless you." I said, "Thank you." He was a heavy-set guy, with full hair, green eyes, and an olive complexion. He then hands me a tissue. It's clean, don't worry. And then he gives me a piece of gum. 5 gum to be exact. I say thanks, and throw it into my backpack. 1 mile, he said. Based on how he speaks, I think he might be a little on the special side. His voice was low, and pretty slow. I'm like, "Excuse me?" He says 1 mile. That was on your Tinder. It said you were 1 mile away. I recognize you. We talked for a little bit, but then you stopped chatting with me. He then gives me one of those chocolate balls that are wrapped in red, all fancy-like. I don't know what they're called, though. I then nervously giggled and told him that I had deleted my account. To be honest, I don't even remember chatting with this guy. I would just swipe right on any and everybody because, like I said, I was on Tinder for goofs. He asked me repeatedly for my number, and I just gave it to him because I'm really bad at rejecting people in person. He immediately called me to confirm that it was my number. At this point, I got off at a different bus stop, close to home, but not too close, and sped walked my ass home. I threw away his candies and blocked his number. Long story short, no more Tinder trolling for me. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.